So when I see an Indonesian horror film drop on Netflix, I pretty much just press play at this point. I feel like I've watched all of the ones that they drop randomly on there. And the cover of this one had me somewhat intrigued because it looked like it was found footage. And this movie is called Jurnal Risa by Risa Saraswati, I think is how you would pronounce this. Now, this is an interesting one because I feel like I'm missing an immense amount of context here in order to fully appreciate this. So this is based off of a YouTube series. Risa Swazi, she was a pop singer turned horror novelist, and she has this like team of people from what I can tell on YouTube that do this like paranormal show where they deal with like possessed people and whatnot, and then they made like a movie out of one of their stories, is what I can tell. So this is definitely, from what I can tell, as I said, I think this is supposed to be a reenactment of one of their cases, and we're seeing like what supposedly happened, but they're a film crew who films this stuff, so why don't they have that? Or did they do this one? I honestly don't know. I tried to look into it the best I could, over like a whole minute of looking around on Google. So I am missing a ton of context. So for anyone who knows this stuff well, who has followed their YouTube channel, I went and clicked on one of their YouTube videos. It was some like spirit cab thing that they were doing, where they were driving around in a cab with like a possessed person. And I went down to the comments, and they can Google translate them, and like the top comment is like, after watching these videos, I'm really terrified of dying. It seems like people have such pain in the afterlife and this and that. And there was like a whole bunch of people in the comments below them, like, oh my God, yes, like me too. And I was like, this is dark. That's not fun. That's not entertainment. Like I watch horror movies for fun. I watch this shit, for entertainment. And people watching this stuff and genuinely like can't sleep at night because they think they're gonna like, have some horrendous afterlife after what they're being told in fictionalized stuff like this is really disheartening and kind of scary to hear. So anyway, I do want to give the context here, the little that I have. So this is supposed to be based on something that has a much broader context to it that I don't know. So I'm only going to be coming at this from a person who just watched this film as a film. Uh, if you can find another YouTube channel that knows the material that is connected to this much better, then have at it. But for right now, I'm just going to talk about this film as a horror lover and as a pretty avid Indonesian horror film watcher at this point. I feel like I've watched so many this year and previous years as well. So let's get into it. So yeah, we are following this team, and they have some like volunteers that come to help them. And one of their volunteers, Prisna, she invokes this demon. She keeps saying its name. This was actually kind of one of the issues I had with the movie. In order for it to feel more realistic, they were letting the name be heard out loud, and then they like warn you against using the name and being like, don't look into it, don't think about the name much, don't say the name much. And I feel like ethically, if they were like legitimately afraid that people were going to get cursed by this demon by saying its name over and over, they would have bleeped the name out and like, you know, obscured the text when they were looking at that name. But no, it's out there in full display, and the person says it multiple times in the film, and it's like, I just watched an entire film about this demon. How is it that you think I'm not gonna think of its name, especially if I get like really afraid of it? If I'm like someone like in the comments of that YouTube section that looks at that and is like, "Oh my god, I can't think of that name, or I'm gonna go to hell." What are you gonna do, right? It's like, don't think of a pink elephant, right? What are you thinking of? A pink elephant? You can't do that to someone. Be like, now that you're really terrified of this name and of this demon that you can't think of the name of, don't think of the name. What? Like realistically, if they really believed that shit, they would bleep out the name and cover it, and then that would make people more intrigued to like track it down, right? If they were so inclined. But to actually put it in the film made it feel silly to me. Anyway, putting on going on from that. Now this is presented as like I should finish up, I guess, the synopsis there. She says the name, she gets possessed, and then they take it upon themselves to try to take her to this village. Of course, it's an Indonesian film. They always got to make it to some like village on the outskirts of the city where people are practicing rituals and whatnot. This is every Indonesian horror film that I've ever watched at this point is almost identical, and this is no different. This is they always do like a supernatural possession or ghost that's haunting somebody. That is like, I think every single Indonesian horror film I've ever watched. I don't know if I've ever seen one that isn't that. I mean, can you? I'm sure people who have watched a lot, especially people from Indonesia, maybe you can point me towards a horror movie in from Indonesia that isn't someone possessed or being haunted by a ghost, because I don't think I've ever seen one that isn't that. Anyway, um, so yeah, this is presented as found footage. It's really, really clean though, so like you absolutely forget multiple times while watching this that this is supposed to be found footage, because the way that it looks like a feature film most of the time. And you know, I would say I was really trying to pay attention to that aspect and see like, does it stick to the rules of found footage? Can every camera angle and camera be accounted for? You know, because there's a lot of found footage films that I'll watch and we'll get like a random camera angle and we'll be like, wait, I know only three people have a camera, or only two cameras, or only one camera exists. Where's this angle coming from? That happens all the time in these movies where you're like, oh, found an inaccuracy. They broke the rules. This one, I would say, not so much. I think that I think every camera angle can be explored or explained. I think it does follow it. It's just that it looks so clean that I guess more it's a mockumentary, right? So you found footage is like amateur filmmakers taking cameras out. They don't have any intention of making some kind of actual documentary out of it. They're just trying to capture footage, or they're just having fun with their cameras or whatever. Um, but I guess Heather and them are like making a documentary, but it feels much more rough, right? As to where this feels like a legit production crew was there on set making this thing. So it just doesn't have the feeling of the guerrilla style filmmaking that most found footage films have. So that's, I guess, what was kind of taking me out of the found footage style. And I kept thinking, like, is this or isn't this? Overall, I thought the movie was fine. I think that it is super tropey. I think that it is very straightforward, generic. Every other Indonesian horror film I've ever watched, it does all of the same shit, right? I already mentioned how they take the girl to the small village and they have to perform the ritual on her and blah blah blah. It's all been done, you know, 1,000 times. There are a couple creepy moments, a couple creepy images in this that were cool, and actually was like, okay, yeah. I think the performances from people are good. I think that the acting is good from people. It's well shot, maybe too well shot, as I had mentioned. But there's nothing more to gain from this outside of maybe the exploration of the added context of the real show and Risa and her career as like a singer turned horror novelist turned documentarian of supernatural occurrences turned filmmaker. And this isn't the only film that she's been involved in. She has like a whole trilogy of horror movies as well that I saw on IMDb when I looked up her career. So she's pretty deep into the horror genre now within the Indonesian horror circuit. So if you do like this, it seems like she has other things to offer, and she's also written many horror novels, but they're labeled as fiction. But the channel that she runs, they're presenting that from what I can tell like it's real. So I don't know. I don't know if there's some L. Ron Hubbard Scientology shit going on here where it's like, I'm a science fiction writer. Well, maybe not. Maybe I'm actually getting messages from, some God or something. I honestly, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, as a film, it is a pretty standard, okay, watchable Indonesian found footage supernatural horror film. If I wouldn't have heard about any of the other stuff, I would have just talked about that. This would have been a very quick review. But then again, I don't really know a whole lot. I could have sat there and reviewed, but everything I looked at was in Indonesian, right? Like all the comments, all the stuff I was looking at, I don't know, I don't know how to speak that language, right? I don't know how to read it. So unless I wanted to go to the lengths of trying to find subs or trying to Google Translate everything, there's only so much research I was willing to do for a movie that I was very blah on to begin with. Like, it's okay, it's watchable. It's gonna fall right in the center of all the Indonesian horror films that I watched. It's fine. So that's it. And it's on American Netflix if you want to check it out. So if you guys know more about this than I do, which is probably most people, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you down there. Adios.